So Maroondah City Council, in the spirit of reconciliation, acknowledges the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as traditional custodians of the land which we are gathered on today, or which I'm on today, where Indigenous Australians have performed age-old ceremonies. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and I would encourage you all to think about whose traditional lands you are tuning into from today, wherever that may be. So yes, today we're talking about the Maroondah Arts and Cultural Grants that are coming up, or that applications are open for now. I'm going to go through a few things. Hopefully, I might talk for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then there'll be time for some questions at the end. So if you, hopefully we can get out of here before 7 o'clock. I'll try and keep you all keep us on task. But yes, I will go through. This is what we're going to be talking about. The purpose of the grants, the eligibility criteria, some hints and tips, the support that's available to you, the key dates, and then at the end we'll have time for questions. So if you do, I might just run through everything. If you have questions at any point, perhaps the best thing to do is to type them into the chat function, and then I'll come back to them at the end, or just hold on to them and we can chat about them at the end rather than kind of stopping and starting. Sometimes that's easier when we're in this online format. So if everyone knows there's a little chat icon, you can just type straight into there and then we'll come back to those questions. All right, so I'm just going to move this down here to make it easier for me to see. Cool. Everyone can still see my screen okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So to start off with, I wanted to just cover the purpose of the grants. These are the kind of stated objectives of the arts and cultural grants. So firstly, to increase community participation in arts and cultural activities. Secondly, to enhance and celebrate local identity through high quality projects with artists and community. Thirdly, to build and strengthen local networks within the Maroondah community and to encourage partnerships and collaboration with community, businesses and council. And finally, to strengthen the identity and profile of the arts in Maroondah through effective arts programming and marketing. So you can see in there, these are just great things to keep in mind. Obviously, there's specific criteria that you'll write to in your grant application that we'll go into in a little bit, but these are just really good things to keep in mind when you are crafting those answers for your grant application. This is what the assessment panel is looking for. This is what they want the grants to deliver each year. In particular, these things around high quality projects, community partnerships, and participation and community engagement are all really important things to think about. So eligibility, this is the first sort of really important topic. Only incorporated not-for-profit organisations are eligible to apply for the Arts and Cultural Grant. So this means in practice that if you are an individual or if your group is not incorporated, then you will need to apply under an auspice. So these are the questions you can see here on the screen that directly relate to this eligibility. So you'll be asked, are you a not-for-profit organisation? Is your group incorporated? And if you answer no to either of those, you will be directed to this part of the form that asks for your auspice. And you can see the information you need here from your auspice, the details of the organisation, and also a letter of confirmation from them. So, I'm not sure how much auspicing is relevant to the people here in this group, but I'll just touch on it briefly. If you do need an auspice, there are a few ways to go about it. It can be done by a professional auspicing organisation. So, for instance, Auspicious Arts is the sort of the main one that comes to mind. Basically, this is an organisation that operates a service to provide an auspice for people who are to make them eligible for grants. Usually there is always a fee involved. Usually that will be a percentage of your total budget. And the other thing is that, they'll require a bit of time, of lead time, usually a couple of weeks to sort of organise the auspice. And then So that's one option, is a kind of professional auspice like that. The other option is if your project, depending on your project, if your project is being done with if you're partnering with a community group or an organisation, a school, something like that, then that potentially that group could act as your auspice. So apply for the grant on your behalf, and do the things that an auspice will offer, the things that an auspice will provide. And usually in that situation, if there's someone you're partnering with on the project, you would not have to worry so much about fees, and that's not something that would have to cut into your budget. If you are applying and you know that you'll need an auspice, I would recommend looking into it kind of as soon as possible. These things take time, and you don't want to be sort of on the last day of the application process and suddenly realizing, oh wow, I can't actually apply for this myself. I need an auspice. So I'd recommend sort of hopping onto the application form now, seeing if you're eligible, and sort of looking into the auspicing straight away. Okay, so moving on, there's a few other things, as those are the sort of main things to know if you're eligible. There's a couple of other things to notice. You obviously need to be either located within or servicing the Maroondah community. So you don't need to live in Maroondah or work in Maroondah necessarily, but the project that you are delivering needs to benefit the community, the Maroondah community, and needs to happen within Maroondah. You need to maintain public liability insurance. This is a pretty standard thing for grant applications. If you don't already have public liability insurance as part of your organisation, then there are a number of grant insurance companies that will provide that to you. Duck for Cover is one that's comes to mind immediately. They provide insurance for artists and performers, so that's one to look into. And you'll need that for the duration of your project. So if your project is happening in, March next year, you'll need public liability insurance that covers that period. You need to, the project to be eligible needs to happen between July of this year and May of next year. That's because the funds are not distributed until the end of July 2022, and the acquittal date is the end of May 2023. So the project needs to happen within those dates. We do not offer extensions, basically, except, in the very off chance that we have continued COVID-related delays and more lockdowns and things like that that are totally outside of your control. There may be exceptions, but at this stage, we won't be offering any extensions to funding beyond May 2023. So the project needs to be completed within that time frame. So here are some things that are not eligible. So events that show or previously shown significant profit. Obviously, if your budget shows us that there's, after everyone's been paid and all the artist fees are delivered, you've got $3,000 of unallocated profit, we're not going to give you a $3,000 grant. All of the funds need to be allocated to costs. Repeated activities that are part of the organisation's annual or regular program. So this one's quite important and a bit unfortunate in some ways, because we know there's so much great activity that happens in the community that is, amazing activity that's part of your program that happens every year, or something you've done before that worked really well and you want to get it up again. Unfortunately, that's just not the purpose of these grants. These grants are for new ideas, new innovations. So unfortunately, we can't fund that activity. New building projects, capital work or facility maintenance. If you are interested in capital works, there is a separate capital works funding program that council runs that you can look into. Fundraising activities, multiple applications. So this goes for across all of council. So your organisation can only, or yourself can only apply for one grant across all of council's grants funding programs. So if your organisation is also applying for a community development grant or a small equipment grant, unfortunately you can't also put in an arts and cultural grant, and vice versa. And as we've seen, unauspiced individuals can't apply. So next, criteria. So there's the panel assesses all applications against a series of criteria, obviously, and they fall into two sections. So we've got the arts and cultural criteria and the community criteria. So I'll go into these in some more detail. The arts and cultural criteria, there's 3 of them, but your application needs to only address at least 2. You can address all 3, but you need to address at least 2. So they demonstrate how the project supports a diverse and culturally rich Maroondah through a community-driven project, initiative and/or event that increases the profile and participation in the arts. Describe the involvement of a suitable skilled artist or arts worker who will be involved in the project. And how does the project further develop existing activities with new and innovative approaches? So as I said, you need to address 2 out of these 3. If your project does speak to all 3 of them, that's perfectly fine. You know, speak to all 3. If you've got a great answer to each of those 3 criteria, that's great. But we're not necessarily looking for quantity over quality here. It's more important to have 2 really strong answers to 2 of the criteria rather than trying to find something to fit all 3. So the next ones are the community criteria. So these, there are 3 sections here again, but you only need to address one of these. So these are weighted, I guess, slightly lower than the arts and cultural criteria. So the 3 sections are community building, community benefit, and community support. And then within each of those sections, there's a series of questions. So once you've decided which of the 3 are most important, you know, is the one that most appropriately matches your project, you need to answer each of the questions within that one section. So we can see here, community building, we've got how will the project increase participation? How will the project promote volunteering? And how will the project create or strengthen local partnerships? Community benefit, how will the project meet an identified community need or opportunity? How will the project increase well-being in the community? And then under community support, how will the project enhance the level of existing service? How will the project provide a service or support to a specific target group? And describe if the project is the only one of its kind in Maroondah, or is there a demonstrated need for duplication? So that third one, community support, I find is the one that's least applicable to our arts and culture grants. It's a little bit, these criteria come directly from the community development grant program, of which arts and culture used to be a part. So that's why they might not seem entirely relevant to arts and cultural activity. So I find that last one, community support, is a little bit more geared towards, you know, community service, delivering organisations who are delivering a community service. So usually it's either the community building or community benefit that the arts and cultural grants speak to. Keep in mind that for these ones, there's a maximum word limit per question of 75 words. So it's quite small compared to the arts and cultural grants that are, I think, 200 to 250 words or something like that. So, you know, we're not looking for essays here. It's just a kind of a few words, you know, speaking to each one. And again, it's about quality over quantity. So if you feel like you can definitely respond to all 3, that's great. Go ahead, but we're not going to weight an application higher because they respond to all of them. If there's an application that only responds to one of the criteria but has some really good answers in there. So yeah, again, choose one category and just answer those few questions within that one criteria category. So we will move on to some hints and tips. So this one's pretty straightforward, and sorry if some of these are a bit obvious, but sometimes the basics are really important. Preview the application form. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, I would highly recommend that when we finish today, or first thing tomorrow morning, go online. The online application is open now. You can preview the whole form without even starting an application. You can look through the whole form, look at all the questions. There are a lot of questions in there. I know it says only a small grant amount, but there are a lot of information you need to provide. So it's great to have a look at that as soon as possible if you're interested in applying. You can also start an application, save it, and return to it at any point before you submit. So if you want to start just entering your basic details just to get yourself started, you can do that and then go back to it whenever you like. Once you've submitted, it's final, but you can keep doing that up until the end of April. I would expect to spend, you'd spend a few hours filling this out. So it's good to kind of be prepared with all the information you need. So this one, again, it seems pretty simple, but, I can't tell you the number of applications we've received where it's really just not clear what the project is. And it's so important to be able to paint a clear picture of the project and what the funds are going to support to the assessment panel. So this is a screenshot of some of the questions. This is even before we get to criteria questions. These are the questions you'll be asked about the project. So things like, describe the project. What are you asking council to fund? Why does the project need to be done? What are the outcomes and how are you going to measure if they're successful? So these are all really important things to be as clear as possible as you can be. What does it look like? What's the experience going to be for people who are attending? How will it work if it's an unusual sort of project? How is the series of activities or events going to work? Where's it going to happen? Who's going to be involved? Why does it need to be done, as you can see, and what outcomes do you want? But the clearest picture you can paint of what it is. I know that sometimes that's hard with these with projects that are maybe a bit more ephemeral, or think about your themes, think about why you're doing it, and really paint the picture. So community partnerships, as we saw in the kind of purpose and objectives of the grants that I started with, a really big part of the purpose of the grants is to build and strengthen community partnerships. So the panel's going to really highly regard applications that demonstrate a partnership with a community group, or an organisation or a business. They want to know that they want to hear about the project, but they want to also see that there's a ripple effect in the community. How is this going to impact and benefit not just your group, not just your organisation or your participants, but how are other people going to be impacted? Of course, not all projects this is not relevant for all projects. Some projects are just, are an artist delivering a project, and that's fine. But if there is, anyone you can think of that could benefit, or who you could benefit from working with, someone you want to partner with, someone you want to be involved, some other people you want to be involved, then I would really encourage you to kind of reach out to those people, talk to them about the project, see how they might want to be involved, and put all of that detail into the application. So budget's our next one. I'm going to go into an example budget. So I've included this because I get lots of questions about how to best present the budget. It's really one of the most important elements in the application. It needs to be really clear, and it needs to encompass all of the income and expenditure for the project, not just the grant. So you can see here in this example, the whole project is costing $6,200. Of that, $3,000 is a Maroondah Arts and Culture grant. A few other things to note about this budget. The income and expenditure columns match. So that's really important. You need to have the same amount total income to total expenditure. You want to make sure you include the value of any in-kind support that you're getting. So there is a place on the application that you'll be asked to list your in-kind support, but it's really important to put it in the budget here. So for instance, we've got here in-kind staffing hours, 40 hours at $30 an hour, a total of $1,200. So this could be even if these are volunteer hours, you know, you might not have a you know, a paid staff in your organisation, but you need to put a value on that, on those hours that you're volunteering. So if you think, okay, I'm going to do 40 hours of volunteer work to get this project happening, my time is worth $30 an hour. That's a monetary value of $1,200. Same, you know, with in-kind materials. So say you've got a donation from Officeworks of $200 worth of materials. Even though you're not getting that money, you need to put that monetary value in as income. And then we can go over here and we can see that it's matched in the expenditure. So the $200 worth of that you're spending on materials that have been donated, that's gone into the expenditure column. It's also, this budget's also good because it's really clear what the $3,000 Maroondah Arts and Culture grant is funding. So we can see the vast majority of it, or over 2/3 of it, is going to artist fees. That's great. The grant, we like to pay our artists. Some of it's going to promotion and marketing, and some of it's going to this AV equipment hire. And then we can see, we can match the project management here. That's the volunteer hours over here, the venue hire, the materials. It's really clear to see what are things paying for. Everything's been thought of, everything's been costed. As for quotes aren't mandatory, so you don't necessarily need to include quotes, but if you have them, I would definitely recommend including them. Especially if you have any, you know, very particularly high costs or unusual, you know, something unusual. So for instance, this AV equipment hire, it would be great to, you know, provide a quote that specifies exactly what that equipment is that's needed. The other thing just to note is, and if you are seeking other grant funding for your project, please include whether it's confirmed or unconfirmed. If it's unconfirmed, that's fine. Just let us know when you're expecting to hear about it. And then once you do find out if you got it or not, just shoot us through an email and say, yes, I got that money, or no, I didn't get that money, but this is here's my updated budget reflecting the $1,000 that I now don't have. Even if the application deadline has closed for the arts and culture grants, you know, if you find out about other funding sources during the assessment process while these grants are being assessed, that's really good information for the panel to have. There is also a question, just to let you know, in the application that refers to whether the project will be able to go ahead with only partial funding. So that's just something to think about. And it also asks, if yes, how much? So that's just something to think about, because basically the way the grants are assessed, we have a pool of money to allocate, but the highest scoring applications will be allocated their funding first. And then it might end up that we have, you know, $3,000 left in the funding pool, and there's two really good applications that have both asked for $4,000. So we ask that question in the application so that we know if one of those applications for $4,000 has said, yes, I will be able to do the project, but, you know, I need $3,000. And then the other application has said, no, I definitely, absolutely need $4,000 to do the project. Then the panel knows, okay, we'd like to fund them, but we don't have $4,000 left. So we're going to give the $3,000 to the people who said they can do it for $3,000. So be realistic. Don't sort of say, oh yeah, I can do it for $500 or something just so you get some money. Do be realistic about what's possible, but it is good to think about, yeah, what things could you potentially cut out of your budget? What changes could you make if you were only to get partial funding? What's the minimum amount you would need to get the project done? So that's budget. We'll come back to our hints and tips. Here are some documents you may need for the application. So these are things just to be prepared, have with you when you're putting the application together. Mandatory, you will need your certificate of currency for your public liability insurance. You will need either your ABN or a letter of confirmation from your auspicing organisation. So we spoke about that. If you're being auspiced, you'll need a letter of confirmation, and you'll also need all of their details, like their ABN. a letter of confirmation or a contract with a commissioned artist. So if you've spoken to an artist, even if you've just made an initial inquiry and they've given you a quote for their services, or if you're at the kind of contract stage and you're ready to commission them, any kind of paperwork relating to that is great. There's a place to upload that in the form. Quotes, as we've discussed, quotes for your budget if you've got some that are relevant. Supporting documentation, so there is an option to upload documentation, photos of your previous work, video files, anything like that you think might be useful, either of your previous work, or if you have something that helps paint that picture like I was talking about of what the project's going to look like, maybe a mock-up of the artwork, or a sketch of the event plan or something, anything like that you think would be useful. You can upload anything like that in the form. And then my last tip, of course, is a bit silly, but is don't leave it till the last minute. I was on the phone mere hours before the application deadline last year, helping people with their final questions, and it's not the way that anyone wants to work. So, give yourself some time to get it all in. Aim to get it done a few days ahead of time, and then you'll be all set. So I wanted to talk next about my role and how I can support you to get the application in. So part of my role as Community Cultural Development Officer is to support artists and groups to apply for grants, support them to try and get funding. So I can do a few things. I can obviously answer questions you have about the application process, anything that's sort of more specific than we've gone into today. I'm always at the end of the phone, even if you don't think of a question today that you want to ask, just give me a call. I can talk to you about, I can talk to you more broadly about your idea or your project. If it's in the early stages, I can talk to you about how to shape it and form it into something that will be more fitting to the criteria. I can advise you on the eligibility and advise you on the strength of the project and how likely it is to kind of meet the criteria. And I can also put you in touch with experts in our team. So, my job is to support the grants, but we have people in, we have a public art officer, we have a curatorial team, we have an arts activation officer who is responsible for kind of performance activity. So, if there's something specific or some specific questions you have that I can't answer that are art form specific, I can put you in touch with those members of our team who might be able to help and answer some of those more specific questions, for instance, about kind of like what materials can I use for this public artwork, or how would I best get this performance off the ground, or whatever it might be. I can help connect you with relevant organisations or groups or artists. So if you're an artist and as you said, you're wanting to kind of investigate some potential community partnerships, I can put you in touch with a community house or a school or an organisation that does something that might be interested in kind of working with you on the project, and vice versa. If you're a group or an organisation and you've got an idea for a project but you need an artist to deliver that work or that idea, then I can kind of help find an artist for you who might have the skills you need for that project. I can advise you on council requirements. So, depending on what sort of activity you are looking at and what your project involves, there may be some council rules or regulations you need to factor in. So, for instance, if you want to, do an event on council land, there are applications to do with that, event permits you need. If you want to install a public artwork, there's permits you need for that. So these are things that are great to think about ahead of time and at least start the process of as you're doing your grant application. So even if you're not I know the funding hasn't been confirmed, so it's like, why would I put in an event application or whatever for a council event? It's still worth looking at what those requirements might be. And that's something I can help you with, is tell you sort of what are the things you're going to need if you want to do, say, a performance in Croydon Park or something like that. And I can also provide feedback on your draft application. So this is something I really recommend. If you want to put draft together, even if it's not the full application, but just your draft responses to the project description and criteria questions, and then you can send them through to me, and I can obviously can't write it for you, but I can kind of give you some thoughts on how to strengthen it, how to make it, you know, the best version of what it is, how to speak directly to the criteria, that sort of thing, or at least give you some questions to go away with and think about in a way that you might be able to strengthen the application. Just allow enough time for that is all I would say. I work Mondays to Wednesdays. So, you know, I'm not here all week, unfortunately. So just give me a few days or a week or so to give you that feedback if, you know, if that's something you're interested in. I also just wanted to let everyone know that I am going to be away basically for all of next week. Please do get in touch if you want to chat in that time, but just send me an email or leave me a message and I will get back to you when I'm back. But yes, then I'm back from basically the first week of April, and then applications are due at the end of April. So I'll still have plenty of time to help you with your work, with your application. So just some key dates to finish off with. Obviously, applications close at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, the 27th of April. The applications are assessed throughout May and June, and applicants are notified whether they are successful or not in late June. On the 20th of July, we have a grants presentation evening. So this is when all of the people who are awarded grants through this program and also through the Community Development Funding Program, they're all invited to come to the evening. They're given a certificate. There's some performances and speeches. It's a great evening, you know, to connect with other members of the community, but also it's a great early promotional opportunity for your event or your project, because you can sort of you know, be part of that group of stories that are told about the grants projects, which is sort of gets the word out a little bit about your project. The funds are distributed in late July, and the acquittal deadline is the end of May 2023. So that's, as I said at the start, projects need to take place between July of this year and May of next year, because you don't, if you are successful, you won't receive the funds until late July. So you need to obviously not be doing the project until after that point. And then, yes, acquittal is the end of May. So all financial elements of the project need to be wrapped up by the end of May so that you can deliver those receipts and invoices and all of that sort of thing. So I think that's everything.